You mean green coat? White. No, the blue. No. Hey.
All right, I got to start the meeting now. I'll have to check. All right, let's see if we can get some council members here together. Fourth meeting of City of Charleston Council to order. You want to call in anybody else from the hallway there? We got any more council members out there?
I think there were some public.
Here they come. All right. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember White, Councilmember Shealy, Councilmember Lewis, Councilmember Mitchell, Councilmember Wagner, Councilmember Gregory, Councilmember Waring, Councilmember Seekings, Councilmember Shade, Councilmember Griffin, Councilmember Moody, Councilwoman Jackson, Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. If you'd like to join us, ask Councilmember White to lead us in a prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Holidays coming up and spending time with one another.
Amen.
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I think everybody's been here before, but just in case, these are our exits out of the room, and there's an exit door over to my right. In the event we had to leave on short notice or unexpectedly, please do not use the elevator, but use the 2 stairs going down and then the 1 stair out the front. Very unlikely, but just in case there were a reason to evacuate the building. I do want to, again, I know it's just been a week since our meeting last week, and my mother had already passed, but I just want to thank again all the council members and citizens who offered their prayers and condolences and came to the services, and thank you very much. It really meant a lot. Thank you. So we do not have any presentations or recognitions this evening other than that. And so we're going to move right to our public hearings. And you all heard us talk a long time about these budgets, and now's your opportunity if you'd like to share with us. And as you heard us mention at Ways and Means Committee, the readings we're giving tonight are just first readings, and so changes can be made at second and third reading, so your comments will be heard and considered. So our first public hearing is on the an ordinance providing distribution of funds of fiscal year 2018 generated by the municipal accommodations fee. And might I suggest, since number 2 is also regarding municipal accommodations fee, but for this year, that we take 1 and 2 together. And I ask that if anyone has any comments they would like to make about the municipal accommodations fee, now's your opportunity. Please come forward. A limit of 2 minutes per speaker, please. And
Mayor, I think we need to explain. Some people who I know want to speak for the public hearing have signed up for citizens' participation.
right.
So many of you have signed up on this sheet, and it's public hearing, Angela, and others, and you do not need to wait until citizens' participation.
So if you came here to speak about the accommodations fee, now's the best shot, even though you might have signed up for citizens' participation. At that time, you can talk about anything you want, pretty much, as long as it's civil. Yes, sir, Councilor.
For those that might not have been here before, we did change the funding for the bids.
Right. I think they were here.
They're here.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. They were here.
Mayor, does it make some sense just to have public comment on all of the budgeting items that we just did?
So I was just going to do accommodations and then take the general fund, next. They just kind of...
Angela, you're first on the
Okay.
list.
Please come forward. State your name and address.
My name is Angela Mack, and I'm Executive Director of the Gibbs Museum of Art. And I just want to extend my thanks to Mayor Tecklenburg and this wonderful body for restoring the $20,000 from the 2018 ATAX surplus for our 2019 allocation. The Gibbs has been a strong partner of this city for a long time. We bring, since 1905, when the city built the Gibbs and asked the Carolina Art Association to be a 50% owner in that building. And since 2009, that relationship has been codified, and this body has been very supportive of what we're doing. We hope that that special relationship will continue as we go forward, and as I sit in this room, because we actually helped to do the redesign of this space and the artwork that you see. We spearheaded it, we redesigned it, and we implemented it. So our tentacles go far beyond the building of the Gibbs, and we support this city and this group wholeheartely. So thank you for your support, and we look forward to seeing you at the Gibbs.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to be heard about accommodations fees? No, he's going to talk about property taxes. Yeah. So next, we'll move right along to general fund liabilities and revenue, which includes things like property taxes.
We move adoption and exception of 1 and 2 while we're at it.
Second.
We just had the public hearing.
We can, absolutely. Thank you for reminding me.
As amended.
We have a motion to accept the same thing we approved at Ways and Means for numbers 1 and 2. Councilmember Jackson.
I just think since we made a point to make sure that we talked about the amendment for the Gibbs, that we should give the other 2 items that were added to the accommodations surplus, so that anybody missed that. Now we're on live streaming, I'm thinking, so people can hear at home.
Okay.
So the other 2 items that...
So in addition, I believe, if my memory serves me correct, we added back $10,000 for the aquarium and $5,000 for the Jewish Studies programs, which really funds the Hanukkah and the Square event every year at Marion Square.
Correct. And we also had a long discussion that we're intending to add some other items in the hope that we do end up with the surplus that Ms. Wharton is expecting. So,
right.
Okay, so Mayor, we have separate items. I mean, the items that were approved in the Ways and Means meeting will be a part of the Ways and Means report.
Right.
And they're separate from these that we're taking up now. But it will be in the Ways and Means report, and it will say that it was amended.
It's state accommodations.
It's state accommodations, and now we're talking about... That's okay. But we'll make sure that it's in there, and I'll say it out loud that it's been amended.
Okay, so. pardon
There was
me.
no amendment, we just adopted them.
These
as-
items are the adoptions of the municipal accommodations fee.
I
There
second.
are. And these are more capital project items that we also approved earlier, but a different fund. Okay, any further clarification or questions needed, comments? All in favor of 1 and 2, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it. Next is our general fund, both budget, both liabilities and revenue. If anybody would like to be heard on either of those, please come forward.
Mayor Tecklenburg, City Council, it's been a while since I've had the honor of addressing y'all, and I remember some older faces here, Councilman White, Lewis, Mitchell, Gregory, Waring, not so old Seekings, and the younger members, I apologize for not having your names on the tip of my
For the
tongue.
record, please state your name and address.
And I'm Jack Simmons, I'm a lifelong downtown resident. I'd like to point out that a pianist and a philosopher have a lot in common. As a pianist, a good pianist can improvise, so can a philosopher strike a chord in our thought process. So I hope to do that today. I'm also on the board of directors of an organization called NoHomeTax.org. And our philosophy is that the freedom to own your home is an illusion, much like Plato's allegory of the cave. And as long as you pay taxes, you're renting from the government and you have a mortgage that can never be paid off. 12 years ago, NoHomeTax.org and others got involved, and we had a referendum in the state and got 50% of our property taxes lifted off. So whatever you pay now, it would have been double. The property tax is probably the most hated tax, secondary to the death tax. It's unfair that it has no relation to your ability to pay. If you live in a home that you bought very modestly and land values go up and your income doesn't follow, you can get taxed out of your home. I'm also a recovering college professor. I taught psychology. I'm a retired physician. And property tax is bad psychology because, in essence, you're punishing good behavior. If you improve your home and your home value goes up, you pay more taxes. It's bad from a medical standpoint. If you move old people out of their homes, they don't do well. Their life expectancy goes down. And it's bad policy in that you're creating more gentrification. I remember the East Side when families lived there.
Mr. Simmons, please wrap up.
Okay. So I beg you to look at other forms of funding, such as maybe assessing the neighborhoods where you want to build these things and not dumping it on homeowners. If you could say my property taxes were going to be $14 or $42 a year, fine, but they're not going to be that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening,
Welcome.
Mayor, council members, community. I rise to speak briefly on the issue dealing with the proposed wage increase. I applaud Leonard Riley. So I would like to applaud the conversation I heard around the table this morning. Absolutely needed. It's been needed for a long time. I'm sure the workers appreciate the movement in the right direction. Unfortunately, I believe we've sat around the table sometime and passed a historic opportunity to do the right thing. This is one of those times. I think that we are on the right path, but we hadn't reached the right level. Our neighbors to the north found a way to do it. They're going to be there in the fiscal year. I challenge this council. We have the smarts, we have the will that seems around this table to do it now. Why play around with it? We should keep up, not catch up. The collateral damage it does to families when you have to bring them up instead of keeping them out is enormous. So I applaud you, but I urge you to take this real opportunity to be on the right side of history. We allow identification to get to a point where we have to try to make up for it. Don't allow us to lag behind on this issue of pay. People coming to the city enjoy our smiling faces when we serve them. Let's make those smiles for real. So the people that's doing the work, let's help them be able to live in the city and rent in the city. I'm in favor of $15 for the city of Charleston, and Charleston has led the way in so many other areas. This shouldn't be an exception. I thank you, and I applaud your effort moving in the right direction.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Mark Knapp. You know, it must be nice to just sit around and spend other people's money like it's nothing. Now, I'll be very frank with you. I didn't realize the city's minimum wage was like 11 something. They're looking to go to 12. You got problems with this. If you go to 15, you're losing your minds. What happens when everybody gets paid $15 an hour? What happened to those poor people that worked their way up that high? All of a sudden, everybody wants more money. Okay, it's a domino effect for those of you that haven't been paying attention. Other things you missed. You know, 4%, right. Someone said rent, it's going to go up. What about vehicles? They're a 6% assessment. What about if you have a luxury item like a boat? Okay, that's a 10% assessment. You've got to really look at what you're doing. $15 is ridiculous. On top of that, most of you remember me following around the storm drainage Vector truck for 2 hours, getting a tour of the city? There's no accountability. You guys need to figure out how to write a fitness report. That's what we call them in the military, on people. And, you know, it's either up or out. You just can't throw money at people. You're going to end up with a bunch of no good people that are just going to sit around, do the least amount they can, and if you don't give them some sort of report on what they're doing, they're just going to do the least amount just to keep it there. And then it's, you know, how hard is it to fire somebody in government? You know, I think government, everybody ought to be wiped clean every 5 years and start over with new people. At least you get some people that would want to do their jobs. And I'm going to tell you, I think it's time for me to get out on the streets again and follow some of your workers.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm Katie Zimmerman, Executive Director of Charleston Moves. I'm also a resident of the City of Charleston. I'm also a member of the City of Charleston Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. There were about 4 other members that were here. They had to leave. I don't have kids, so I don't have to go anywhere. You guys are stuck with me. Thank you all again. You heard me say this last week, and I just want to reiterate what's really important to get back in the budget, however you can figure it out, even if it means waiting to see how the surplus goes and if we can put it in that way. However you can do it, if we can get on the books, get ready to hire a mobility manager, that would be wonderful. It's in the memo that the Bike Ped Advisory Committee presented to Traffic and Transportation. That was one of the items that we did ask for. It's vital because we are leading the state in bike and pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries, as you all know. And this is the way that we can have an actual staff member, so less contracting out, less worrying about spending extra money on getting these bike ped projects designed in-house and shepherding them through the process. A specific example that I can give you is we've been hearing for a long time at Charleston Moves about Rutledge Avenue and how dangerous it is and what can we do about Rutledge Avenue. And we've been going back and forth. We met with the district DOT. They told us if you can come up with a design for this, then maybe we can insert it into a resurfacing program and cover the cost. We don't have somebody on staff to handle the design because everybody's overworked. So a mobility manager would be ideal to help shepherd this through the process and save some lives. That's just one example of many, 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 and you all have your own examples as well. So thank you so much, and I appreciate all of your discussion tonight.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Leah Farrell with the Preservation Society of Charleston. So in reviewing the draft 2019 plan, much like the discussion Council had here earlier tonight during Ways and Means, we would like to emphasize the critical need for sufficient city staffing to accomplish the goals that the community has agreed to. We have Plan West Ashley, we have the Johns Island Community Plan, now we have the new citywide transportation plan. These are just a few. We would encourage you to speak with the directors of these departments, specifically planning and preservation, traffic and transportation. You know, these entities are responsible for shaping the built environment of our city. They're tasked with implementing these plans. I'm sure if you spoke to them, they would explain, you know, the staffing needs that they have. And we need to make sure that it's adequately funded, because if not, you know, executed at 2 George, then these are just plans collecting dust on the shelf. And lastly, we would like to mention that with regard to the critical flooding infrastructure that we know has been coming up time and time again, some of these priority projects like Calhoun West, the low battery seawall, we would like to see, you know, where there's already been movement made, that these projects get protected in budget moving forward. And relating to that, the stormwater management department that we just, you know, the City Council just created, I know that, you know, this was sort of in tandem with city budget that's happening, and there's amendments that will likely come forth, but we'd really need to see this department adequately staffed and resourced, or we're not going to be a resilient community now or 50 years from now. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lance Davis. I have property in Charleston and Mount Pleasant addresses. I'd just like to echo Ms. Zimmerman's comments about the mobility manager. Just, I'm an avid cyclist, do about 5,000 miles a year of commute cycling, and so I've traveled all these streets, daytime, nighttime, getting to work at Roper Hospital. I'm a physician. When you look at other cities that are a little ahead of us in terms of that type of transportation, what you see is well-planned bicycle access, and you see people using them. You also see an economy developing with the immediate rental bikes and the bike shops, and so there is a little return there, and you also see happy tourists with that environment. So I think it does speak to anything that we can do to improve the safety of non-vehicular transportation is incumbent on us. And a little tie-in, I want to thank you all for passing the plastic bag ban, and during those 5,000 miles a year I've done, I picked up thousands of bags. I've got hundreds of photos of the devastation that it renders to the eye and to the wildlife and to our own bodies as it gets in. So I want to thank you for your good work and for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Brown.
Good afternoon, Dave Tecklenburg, and to your members of City Council. I was here on last week talking about overworked and underpaid. I once myself was overworked and underpaid. We got teachers, the teachers was not good enough to get a decent wage. We got firemen that's work, not good enough to get a decent wage. Police is not good enough to get a teaching wage. Waitress, hostess, dishwasher, housekeeper, they love their job. That's why they got it. It's not because they don't have any education, because they like what they're doing. And because they like what they're doing, we as a people should not look down on them and say they are nobody. They don't need money. They can live. Even the wages are going up, the apartments are going up, the medical bill is going up, but not wages. Why not give them the good wages so we can have them to live as comfortable as we builders are living when they build these high apartments? It's $35,000 to rent an apartment. Students cannot rent an apartment unless it's 3 or 4. Why? They got student loan, they got the car and apartment. How can they live? If we, the builders, going to build everything and tear down the people, let us give them $15 an hour. Let us build our city. Let us build the people, not tear them down. Thank you. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard on our budget matters?
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Point of privilege, if you will. I just want to recognize Leonard Rowley. I didn't know he's going to be here today. Could you please stand?
He was the gentleman years ago at the gateway coming into Ashleyville, where the first 2 houses, affordable houses, are being built. He worked with the city, sold the property, and now you're going to have a permanent housing for affordable housing. He was one of the first persons that stepped forward and was willing to sell his lot. So I just wanted to recognize him for doing that. Yeah, give him a hand.
All right. So we have a motion to move as approval as amended. Would take number 3 and 4 together, both the liabilities and the revenue. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. And next is a ordinance authorizing mayor to execute on behalf of the City of Charleston a development agreement. It's a modification between the city and 1776 LLC governing the development of properties owned by them on Johns Island, which we're having a public hearing on it first, which makes possible a donation of land to the City of Charleston for the North Pitchfork. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Hearing, seeing none, the matter comes to council. We have a motion to approve. Council.
I apologize for interjecting. This development agreement goes with a PUD amendment, which will be heard on December 18th. And the public hearing on the development agreement needed 30 days notice. And even though that got moved, this couldn't be moved. So we need to, if possible, have second reading and third reading on the 18th with the PUD amendment. So this would just be a public hearing if it's council's wish and the development agreement be deferred.
We're not to take any action on it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
That would be the preference, yeah. This is second reading.
This is...
So, yes.
So we would give it second reading and then next time give it third reading, is that what you're saying?
Council could do that, or council could wait to give it second and third reading on December 18th.
Public hearing first. We did.
Wait,
we just did.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, nobody came forward to speak.
Very fast, public hearing.
Yeah.
I might take you.
The deferral, okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. We could give it second if we wanted to.
We just deferred it.
And not third. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. We have a motion to defer on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is the approval of our city council minutes from November 13th. Got a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion, additions, deletions? All in favor, please. Oh, Councilmember Griffin.
I'm going to abstain from November 13th since I wasn't present.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we have one abstention. Next is our citizens' participation period. So if you were here to speak about some other matter, now's your opportunity.
Some of them, right, some of them I know Susan Lyons, Margaret Perry, Veronica Goodridge, and Muhammad Idris. Yes, Susan Lyons is right there.
I'm Susan Lyons. I live on Gadsden Street downtown. I am speaking to you both for Groundswell, our grassroots organization, and for myself. I've been coming to council meetings for months, hoping to hear that the city would at long last face our flooding problem honestly and take appropriate action. This has not happened, and I cannot for the life of me understand why not. Do you not believe that floods from storms and high tides are eating away at our infrastructure and our way of life? Do you not think that this is going to worsen? Do you not care what happens to the city of Charleston, or do you simply lack the political will to unite in the face of this crisis? I am told on good authority that quite soon coastal cities that are not aggressively responding to their flooding problems will be passed over by those on Wall Street who issue bonds in favor of cities that are acting more responsibly. If you are worried about money, you might think about that. Flooding is and has been an urgent problem for this city. As office holders, you are expected to respond with urgency. Charleston is not just a pretty place to develop and overdevelop. People live here, and frankly, you have not been listening to us. Thank you.
My name is Margaret Peary, and I live on Halsey Street. I'm here to speak in support of funding for 2 critical flooding mitigation projects that are on your agenda for tonight. The first is the Calhoun West Drainage Project, and the second is the Low Battery Seawall Project. It's my understanding that the exit shaft at St. Phillips and Morris Street are a crucial element of the Calhoun West Drainage Improvement Project. There is a narrow window of time to get the shaft funded, designed, and constructed before the property is built on, which will kill the project. I would consider failure to fund these 2 projects an abdication of the city's responsibility to protect the lives and to provide a safe living environment for its inhabitants. I have lived on Halsey Street for 6 years, and over this time, I have watched the flooding increase from 3 to 4 times a year to once or twice a month. I have been trying to sell my home for the last year and a half. I have reduced the price several times. I have spent $75,000 on improvement projects on the home. I have probably had over 50 to 75 lookers and not a single offer. Flooding has affected my ability to sell my home and the value of my home. I'm not sure I'll ever be able to sell it. One person came 4 times, and before she finally told her agent that she just couldn't buy it because she couldn't deal with the idea of waist-high water surrounding her home.
Time.
I just put the house back on the market, and it was scheduled to be shown last Saturday, and our street was flooded, and they canceled.
Time.
What? Okay. My real estate friends tell me that clients have stopped, a lot of clients have stopped looking in Charleston, and I want to say that this is a crisis, and I'm asking you to stop saying we don't have the money to fix it and start saying we will find the money to fix it. Thank you.
I'm Veronica Goodrich, and I'm with Groundswell, and I'm a resident and a taxpayer, and all the good things that come with living downtown. I was walking along Murray Boulevard, and it dawned on me, after we dodged the bullets of the storms that didn't affect us this time, that Murray Boulevard was being patched up. The wall was being patched. And it struck me as being odd, because I remember Jacob Lindsay giving a beautiful presentation of a seawall this time last year. And a beautiful conversation was being held by all of you about a seawall this time last year. And it was supposed to have started. And I haven't heard or seen anything about the seawall since. I've heard rumors that it's been delayed. I've heard that the amount has come in at a different, just rumors, truly rumors. And Groundswell, we don't know. And we were talking about it just at our meeting last night. What is the status of that particular seawall? And if there is no status on it, we should know, as responsible stewards of this city. And if there is a temporary measure that's being planned, we should know. as being stewards of us, your taxpayers. So I emphasize you have two things on the map, on the agenda. Calhoun West is something that is very important, even though I know we just had an unknown entity talking about the Fishburne Spring pump station, but Calhoun West is very important, and I hope that that does go forward. And the seawall. What is the status? What's the quandary? That beautiful presentation, everybody was gung-ho, it was a priority. Flooding was a priority number one. Just a reminder. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Muhammad Idris. Gone.
I think he's there.
Okay. Louise Brown. That was Miss Brown. Yes. Luke Daniels and Franny Henty.
I think Luke left too.
Luke left also. Winslow Hasty. Winslow is here. And Nita Weiss is here.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm here to speak on something that hadn't been heard yet. It's the next item on your agenda, the short-term rental ordinance update from the legal department and the planning department. And I'd just like to say that I want to thank the council and their wisdom back in, I think it was October, when there was a proposal to change the ordinance, we thought prematurely, and the idea for the two departments of the city to come together and kind of consider some of the issues that Councilman Waring was bringing up. And we just like to say we've been hearing some really exciting things about the enforcement measures that are going on, how the violation and prosecution process is working in the courts, and that the data is all very positive. And so I just want to emphasize again the importance of continuing to collect that data, to evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness, rather, of the ordinance, and to really be very careful about making amendments too soon when this is a fairly new operation that we have here in the Department of Livability. And I just want to say thanks again, thanks to the city departments that are looking at this, and look forward to hearing an exciting report from them. And we just want to stay vigilant on this issue because we think it's extremely important to the livability of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Nita Weiss.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Council. Thank you for everything that you do, and it's always amazing to sit in and listen and hear all the things that you deliberate on for the benefit of our city. So much appreciated. And sitting here recently over the past couple of weeks and hearing you look at the budget and look at all the things that you need to address for our city, totally respect that and appreciate that. What I would like to chat with you about tonight briefly is, while you deliberate on the budget for next year and the mayor, that in looking at Charleston Sister Cities International, we were able to basically start our program and launch at the beginning of last year. And the grant money that we received from you last year with community assistance was used for a trade mission to Panama, which we did successfully this year, that should add business and value and revenue streams to our community and our state, in addition to also fostering goodwill measures with future programs this coming year in Panama that deal with education, cultural, historical, and resiliency exchanges. Something that you may not be aware of, or perhaps you did catch this over the weekend, is when China's President Xi Jinping left the G20 Economic Summit in Argentina, he went directly to Panama, where he sat down with the President of Panama and signed 19 projects into reality that deal with infrastructure building, education, cultural exchanges, etc. And there is certainly a concern in Panama, as we were told in our delegation by the U.S. Embassy and Panamanians, that with Panama and their right to do business with China, that's totally respected, but that, you know, there needs to be some transparency there. Mike Pompeo flew in the last day of our trade mission to caution Panama about doing business with China. Our efforts next year with sister cities will complement all of the initiatives that China is getting ready to implement in our backyard in Panama and the Panama Canal. So sister cities do add value, and they do help. And we look forward to working with you next year. You have a list of our future upcoming sister cities. So I hope that when you're doing the budget, you also think about how well we've used your finances this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we have Laura Cantu, I think, and Frank.
Cantrell.
What is it?
Cantrell.
Cantrell.
Cantrell. Okay, I couldn't tell that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Frank Haygood.
I think Frank left. He was here.
Ms. Long, please proceed.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Laura Cantrell. I'm the executive director of the Coastal Conservation League, and we are a conservation advocacy organization with headquarters here in Charleston. We are very supportive of and encouraged by this body's commitment to addressing issues related to flooding and drainage in our community. And we're appreciative of you continuing to prioritize that work. I'm here tonight to express our support in particular for your funding and implementation of the low battery seawall and the Calhoun West initiatives. These are initiatives that will enable the entire western side of the peninsula to better withstand the growing impacts of sea level rise, increasingly frequent and intense storms, and other related flooding and flooding and drainage problems, and will impact the health and well-being of thousands of our residents, our medical district, and our institutions of higher learning. We want to continue to work with you on the advancement of those two projects in particular, but as we all know, water knows no boundaries, and we are also supportive of your work and prioritization of funding and drainage and resilience initiatives across the city of Charleston, not just on the peninsula. So I look forward to getting to know and work with each and every one of you, and I thank you for your service and for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Was there anyone else? Did we miss anyone? Oh, Mark Knapp. He did sign up. He's allowed to speak at both.
Oh, okay.
You don't get, if I get 2 shots, I'm going to take it.
No, Mark, it only had it one time.
Huh?
Name's only on here one time. So.
No, you had a public hearing and then this is participation.
Please, by all means, proceed.
Oh, Lord. Wouldn't Margaret Thatcher or Winston Churchill said that, you know, socialism is great till you run out of other people's money. And you folks seem to, a lot of you seem to embrace that. A couple more things. Number one, are you trying to become a nanny city? I mean, I look at people that stand up here and say they don't know what's going on with the wall and with that sort of stuff. Do they not, I mean, do I need to go change their diaper that they can't call their city councilman or call the city and ask, you know, what's going on? Although, you know, it used to be you ended up with a recording at the city, but now you get to talk to somebody, which is nice. So, back to the other items. How do you, I'm really concerned. You have a 25% budget overrun on a project and you're just now finding out about it? I think, you know, I think you need to talk to your engineers. I think maybe granted, it may have been done 10 years ago, but things have gotten better. They've gotten less expensive to do these things. Why would there be a 25% increase? Somebody's not watching. Or either that or you got the wolf guarding the hen house, which is not unusual. So, you know, it's important that you understand you're raising taxes And there's no reason to. I was looking at your budget. I just looked at it. You know, you've had a 9% increase in property taxes. 9%. Why do you need to spend every dime of it? Why do you have to have a mobility thing? You know, people up here talking about this stuff, why can't they do it? You know, they need to get off their rears and do this stuff. We don't need to be hiring more people. God.
Thank you, sir. Was there anyone else we missed? All right. Well, thank you all very much for your comments this evening. I would share with council also from our Standard & Poor's report that assigned to Charleston a AAA credit rating on our borrowing, that they in fact recognize our proactive addressing sea level rise, natural disasters and flooding, and the establishment of our resiliency division and other initiatives like our buyout program for properties prone for flooding. This is all in the Standard & Poor report and is working with partners even on historical homes. So I'll quote, it says, given the city's significant exposure to flood risk, we view this as a proactive approach to address these risks and a credit positive. So in fact, Standard & Poor's gave us credit, and that helped them in their AAA bond rating for the city. All right, so next is our petitions and communications. We have an update from legal and planning regarding the short-term rental ordinance. So Mr. Lindsay and Mr. Riccio, I believe jointly are going to share with you what's going on in terms of the numbers and proposal for a process going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as our screen is coming up, we're going to have a brief introduction by Mr. Riccio, who's going to go through our most recent stats. Then I'll walk you through our recommendations that are the result of our meetings with the legal department.
This will be quick, so it'll be painless for you, I promise. Yeah, really quick, where we are to date, these stats are combined with the zoning applications that have been received. So far today, we have 771 advertisements, the short-term rental advertisements that have been removed from the online websites. About 173 of these were direct communication from my officers with individuals. We're starting to bring people in, working with them, and they're understanding the process, and we're assisting them getting to the zoning department to try to see if they can get their permit. Out of those, 615 short-term rentals units are currently being advertised. I sent Mandy these stats this afternoon. Already they've changed. They've dropped from, we have now 775 advertisements removed and 1,611 short-term rentals that are currently advertised just in those few amount of hours. 24 cases have been adjudicated, 23 convictions, 1 dismissal. The reason for that is I chose to dismiss it based on I felt the case needed to be a little stronger, so we dismissed it and pursuing the owner with court action. 36 summons are pending court for livability court on the 17th of December. We've had 3 public workshop sessions already to educate the public on the proper methods of getting a permit, obtaining a permit, and going through the process, kind of guiding them through it. 259 short-term rental permits have been issued. 100, and the stat's not up there, 126 of those were pre-existing. No, 186 were pre-existing bed and breakfasts and short-term rentals in the zoning overlay. So do the math, I guess it's like 97 that are new short-term rental permits. So far, we have 114 applications currently in a review process, and 10 applications have been denied because they just have not met the standards for the process. And one thing we discovered, we have a really good group that meets regularly. City staff from planning, my department, budget, finance, IT, legal, all of the above, and we've been working very closely. And it dawned on me yesterday when the Fire Marshal, Rick Flugie, mentioned, he says, you know, Dan, another upside to all this, and I didn't realize this, but he says, because we have the process in place, the permitting process with the safety, with the Fire Marshal and the safety and code, that's improving the properties. They have been kind of substandard, but the ones that are applying are now meeting a higher standard of code, which is helpful in the safety aspect of the community. So not only code, but the aesthetics of the properties, they want to make them look nicer for short-term rentals. The other side of it is we've already noticed that individuals we have brought to court, several of them have placed their 6% properties on the market and selling them. So the upside of it's not just the number of advertisements that have been removed or the numbers that are remaining. It's the housing that's coming available and the residences that are becoming safer because of this process.
Yeah, go ahead.
How much have you collected?
Court fees are approximately, just with the 23 convictions, every one was $1,087. So that's over $20,000 in about a month and a half.
Thank you.
36 cases are coming up to court. The judge has been pretty vigilant as well with the fine amounts as max at our request.
Councilmember Shade.
No, we don't get to keep all that money now. Some state, some goes to the state, some comes to the city, so we spread it out. So to give you a definitive, we'd have to break it down.
At least 50% goes to the state.
What a deal.
That was one of my questions, was the average fines that have been imposed. And then the second question is, what were the reasons for the denials on the applications, generally speaking?
Denials on the applications. Obviously, they didn't meet all the criteria.
I mean, but was there a particular reason?
No.
Okay. There was a common thread, is what I'm asking.
We're not prepared to come back to you with all those exact answers, but we could look through all of them and come back to you at a future date. There are a number of things that can make a property not suitable, of course, and I think all of them have been in play.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
Mr. Lindsay, you want to continue with?
Of course, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is in response to a request that came from council a month ago, and you all asked the staff of planning to get together with the staff from the Corporation Council and come up with a pathway forward for how we address changes to the short-term rental ordinance, and that's exactly what we've done. And this is what we recommend to council as a result of this discussion, or discussions, I should say. The first thing is that just like these numbers you just saw, staff will be issuing regular performance reports or status reports on the ordinance itself. And this data comes out, and one of the things that we're going to be doing is regularly issuing those reports. Now, in looking at best practices around the nation and what we believe would work best here, we recommend the creation of a short-term rental advisory committee. Now, this is not the same as the short-term rental task force that we had before. A lot of those folks don't even live here anymore. They probably don't want to talk about short-term rentals after their service. They're done with that. Some of them may want to come back, and we would recommend having a few members that would maintain continuity. So hopefully we could get participation from some of those members. But ideally, this could be a small, relatively manageable group of people who would have all sides represented and who could be neutral and balanced. And they could look at the status reports that come from council evaluate the existing policies and analyze the effect of proposed policy changes that may come from council. They could review national best practices and make recommendations to Planning Commission that would then come to you through the standard rezoning process should we decide that changes need to be made. And they would do this job for some period of time. We could say, let's put it in place for 2 years or whatever the interval is. So they monitor this thing, they weigh it against best practices, and make a sound judgment about how changes should take place. This is really based on the city of Denver, who's doing this very well, as well as a number of other cities around the country. This, however, is not something that's budgeted for 2019. We were making our budget drafts, we didn't put this in, so we don't have the staff that's allocated to do that. We'd figure out how to do it. But there's an apparatus, of course, to administer such a committee. This committee also may be best formed as a subcommittee of the Planning Commission. So it could actually be a subcommittee, and it could include members of Planning Commission or even members of council as we evaluate those. So that's our recommendation. Now, with that said, we actually are coming up on our 9-month review period that we promised you. It was not from the beginning of the enforcement. It was from the time that the ordinance was first passed by you all. And that will be in January. So we will have a large public forum, and we are going to invite all the members of the public, as well as all of you, members of the Planning Commission, members of the task force who are still around, to publicly review at this 9-month interval the performance of the ordinance itself. And of course, we would look forward to public input during that session. That's going to be upcoming in January, and we'll make sure that everyone is informed when that takes place.
I think that's it. Councilmember Shade.
When a person, and I was just sort of follow up my other question, if a applicant's application is denied, it just dies at that point, do you envision this committee to have a review process of that denial?
This wouldn't be a committee that would hear appeals from applicants per se. In zoning, there's a process for doing these things. This is a committee that would be looking at the performance of the overall ordinance. If y'all want to change something in the ordinance, they could review it against best practices and review it against the data and make a neutral recommendation. So they wouldn't be hearing appeals from applicants. They're not in that chain of approvals per se.
What about, what I'm concerned about, and I think this is what came up in our discussions earlier, there may be some properties that the applications did not, like you said, it didn't hit all of those checkpoints that you need to hit. But they may be outside of that zone, I guess, a better way of saying it, in which they may apply if they were not into that particular geographic area. Right. It's just sort of blanketed and not fit into that.
Well, Councilmember, to answer that question specifically, an applicant in that case could have two options. One is that they could come to you all and you could change the ordinance so that they were no longer denied on the basis of whatever reason they were kicked out. That's one thing that you can do. The other thing that you can do, and we are interested in this, is create a new zone or even just simply allow individual properties to zone into the already existing accommodations overlay. And that could occur anywhere in the city. We've talked about a lot of those ideas. What y'all asked us to do, though, was to think on what the pathway is going forward to make those changes. So what we're suggesting is, if y'all want to create a new zoning process to allow those applicants to go forward, or if you want to allow an appeals process, whatever those ideas may be, we create a new neutral review committee. We send it to them. They can look at best practices. They can come back and talk to us about what the effect would be on the city. And then that would go through the process itself. So we think that given the difficulty of this issue, looking at how other cities are handling it, this is in line with best practices nationally.
Councilmembers Moody and then Jackson.
Mr. Lindsay, would you go back to that first slide? Something didn't, that one. If I understand what that's saying is that there were 771, 75 that were up there that have been removed.
Right.
That we now have 611 that are advertising currently? Yes. Have they not gotten a letter, or that seems like we haven't done a whole lot, but I know you've been doing more than that.
Right. Well, what that means, out of the 1615, it goes through a validation process to the software company. We don't get them all at one time. It takes time to validate that property is in fact
in the city and in the...
Well, no, they're all in the city.
Okay.
But it tells us that they have to validate, they have to check, recheck it. Before we get it, they do the job for us, but it's a process. Currently, there's approximately 500 right now that are confirmed. We have confirmed these are definitely in violation. The others are being checked into and validated. What we do, our process is we send out a warning letter for cease and desist. Give them 10 days to respond. Within that 10 days, some of them respond, some of them don't. Then we issue a summons. We've already issued summonses in California and New York, places like that, with process servers. So we're not just staying local. A lot of the problems we're dealing with are out-of-state property owners that are 6%. So it's working. Their lawyers are calling us from New York saying, what do I need to do? So out of that now 1611, it's just going through that process. It takes time for my guys to tackle it. So when we get a list, we start investigating, and then we just go on to the next ones. Once we clear those, we go back to the list. So it's just a process that we got to kind of keep going with.
So out of that 1,600, you're currently working on 500 of those?
No. We're currently working on probably 50. We only have 3 guys. Of those 500, we'll get to them once we complete the investigation. Once we complete the paperwork with the warnings, which a lot of, just like yesterday, we brought a lady in with 6 houses. She stopped, took everything off, and just by consulting with her. So she's now in compliance, and 2 of those properties are eligible for, they're in the short-term rental overlay. So we're constantly having to play catch-up. That's all it is. There's so many, once they're validated, that we put them in, we assign them to the officers, a handful of them, we investigate them. Once the summons is sent out and the packet's made, we go back to grab some more from the list.
I guess my concern, and maybe we need to have a little bit more information like that, a breakdown of that 1,600. But if that's what we've got, is 1,600 out there that are advertising, and we're working through those, we've only made 60 cases really. 24 have been adjudicated, 36 are pending. So the numbers don't look like we're doing much.
Well, what's happening is the holidays. We only had 1 court session in November. We only have 1 in December. Had we had 2 per month, we could knock them out faster.
Well, so, I guess that was my underlying question. What do we need to do?
I don't want to overburden the court until, we don't want to send too many cases at one time. That is our slow up. Once the new year comes in, we get back on a normal court schedule, then we'll be able to process them out much quicker.
Okay, well, we need to know if there's something we need to be doing.
No, we're good.
Okay, all right.
We're moving.
It just didn't look like there was a lot of activity.
There is. It's just not have it. We've got to adjudicate them and get them going. Okay. That's the problem.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson, then Gregory.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Officer and Mr. Lindsay. I just following on Councilmember Moody's questions to you. Are you fully staffed now with the number of enforcement people that were going to be dedicated to this?
Yes, 3 full-time, and that's all they do. Every day. Some of them, we rotate them on the weekends. They're actually visiting locations, interviewing tenants, providing us with the information that we ask, which are itineraries on their mobile phones. We're making cases. But again, the delay has been the court not in session because of the holidays.
Okay, good. And then my real reason for raising my hand was more on the zoning side, Mr. Lindsay. I appreciate that you're now, into the groove of understanding what people are presenting with their applications and going through the whole review and approval process and coming at the other end. I'm wondering if there would be any way that in the interim, before we get into changing any ordinances, which I totally agree we should not be even considering that until we had a much longer period of studying and evaluating and comparing to the other metro areas. But in terms of being able to just consider a case-by-case exception, do we have any, any authority to do that within the zoning administrator's purview? I'm thinking in particular of this homeowner that I didn't even know that this situation existed when I was, trying to be as thoughtful, and I know I've been, convinced that we should be using the National Register designation as a way of filtering out properties in the old and historic district. But there is a husband and wife, they're elderly, they live on a fixed income essentially. They have a carriage house that they had rented out long-term in earlier years, but it's really too much of a burden for them to do that. Their house has been submitted for an individual listing. They're in the historic, recognition zone for the National Register. The review has been delayed. They have questions to answer. They're having to spend money with a historic preservation consultant to do all of this. And they really need to bring in some income and even to think about continuing to stay in their home. So I'm just wondering if they're in your district, Councilmember Seekins, I'm sure you know them. I'm wondering if we have any, leeway at all to consider a very hardship special exception reason like this that we could help, individual cases.
Well, this is a zoning matter, so anyone who wants to appeal their existing ruling by an administrator or to seek a variance from what they have goes to the Board of Zoning Appeals to seek a variance. That goes through a 5-part state-mandated hardship test. So this is a state process, which would be a variance from zoning. And that's the way that all of zoning works. Zoning, to quote or paraphrase our former corporation councilman, Mrs. Cantwell, she often would reiterate to us planners that zoning regulates uses, not users. We don't want zoning discriminating against or for an individual person. We want it looking at the use that's occurring on the property. That's what zoning does. So an individual user of a property who feels that their use doesn't fit pursues that through the Board of Zoning Appeals, as is mandated by state law. With that said, we always knew there were going to be folks out there who wanted to do something that wasn't allowed by the ordinance at the beginning. We always knew that. Now, some of those folks are corporate owners out of New York, and others are people who have lived here for a long time. We're getting the data back now that lets us see how it performs.
Right.
And we're also looking at, and we're tracking all the people who weren't able to apply, to Councilmember Shahid's question earlier. We're getting to a point where we could look at those things in batch, look at them and say, this is what's excluding people that should be able to short-term rent. And this is the thing that's excluding folks that are corporate landowners from off that we don't want eating up our housing stock. We're getting to that point where I think we can make some smart decisions. That's why we recommend the creation of this new committee to do exactly that. Neutrally evaluate the performance of the ordinance, look at why people are excluded, look at where it's performing well. The 771, a lot of those are units that were returned back to the housing stock,
I
which is
appreciate
awesome.
that we have some, more trends and more considerations to give, and I trust that we'll be making good, change decisions or whatever we decide to do down the road. I'm simply just wondering on behalf of a constituent of the city, a citizen of the city, if there are things that, we could be doing to be helpful. So basically, when they were rejected they didn't meet that one criteria. They met every other criteria for their district, their zone 1. If they go back to the zoning administrator and show their hardship, then there's a chance that they could go before the BZA and have a variance issued?
Any landowner has the right to seek a variance should they feel that they are entitled to one. What I would say is put those people directly in touch with me. I'd be happy to sit down with them and look at what the exact issue is, and we can make a determination if it could potentially get a variance.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, of those that were convicted, how many continued, if any? And yes, and if they did, what would be the penalty?
How many people kept doing it?
Yeah, how many people? Oh, I'm sorry.
You said continued.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
not to be harsh here, but out of those 36 summonses, one person received 10, the other person received 10. 20 of those go to 2 people.
Okay.
That's a maximum 1,000. They finally got it after the 10 times tickets that we issued to them.
So it's 1,000 per. That's the point I just wanted the body to realize that.
So of that group there, the 36, 20 of those belong just to 2 people. Because they didn't get the message. It took them a little.
Same property or different property?
Same property.
Same property.
I know one of them.
2 people were renting it.
Did they pay?
They come up to court for their next hearings with those 20 tickets on the 17th of December.
Thank you.
They understand now.
Thank you. I think so.
They got the message. All right. Any other questions, comments?
Move on.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. We appreciate it. Next, we'll go to our council committee reports. First is Committee on Public Works. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Committee met yesterday. The bulk of our meeting was on the miscellaneous updates on Calhoun West Drainage Project, an update on King Street and Huger Street Drainage Project, and I don't know if Mr. Newham is still here or not. Oh, he's gone, I'm sorry. Councilman Lewis, he was going to give an update on that, but the solution is still a pump station, and the funding for that is going to come from TIF funds and drainage fund. We had an update on Orleans Woods and the status of the drainage easements. Something that we are going to have issues with, in particular in the older areas. The city spent, I know it was at least $16 million 18 years ago doing the drainage over in Ardmore. It was the first major drainage project the city had done. We have the infrastructure in place. We need to get a ditch from some of the people that came here complaining about with pictures, Mr. Mayor, of flooding in their homes. Believe it or not, we got 3 people almost after a year, or a little more than a year, that will not sign an easement where the city can come in, 10-foot easement, create a ditch, gravity flow, get the water that would be in their homes if a flooding, heavy rain event occurs. So we need to have a legal process, and I know Ms. Ardina, her team's working on that, but this is something that's going to repeat itself over and over again. So if we're going to develop a legal template when people refuse to sign an easement, so we can simply get a ditch or a gravity flow to get the water out of harm's way for not only them but their neighbors, a year and a half of getting that done, we just got to find a better way. So that came up on Ardmore, but other than that, was just for information purposes. There was nothing acted on.
Second.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Councilmember Waring. I guess I was hoping, I thought that usually the low battery wall is on your list, and since we have people here from that neighborhood.
Good point. I'm glad you brought that up. It was on last month. I mean, not last month, last week's. Last week's.
Right.
I believe we approved the move forward with an excess of a $9 million repair of the low battery wall. So maybe they didn't pick up on that, but we had the presentation on the repair of the whole battery wall. The city's committed to fixing the battery wall for, I think, to the tune of $50 million. That was discussed. It's in the minutes of last week's public.
And it's starting at the Coast Guard end.
Starting at the Coast Guard and coming towards the curb. So they'll be seeing action sometime in 2019, I believe.
That's correct.
Part of repair the wall.
In addition, there was a presentation given to the neighborhood with Mr. Newham, with our private engineers, with me for an hour and a half, a week and a half ago on the low battery. So there's been lots of information about what's going on with the low battery in our neighborhood.
Thank you for bringing it up, Ms. Jackson, because we had a little sidebar conversation when the lady spoke at citizen participation, but I think you all may have missed that, but that information is available for you all, the repairs that's going to be started in 2019 on the low battery wall. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next, our Committee on Ways and Means, Councilmember White.
So this is where those items, council member, that you were considering, the Gibbs, the aquarium, Hanukkah, as well as the other budgets that we passed that will come back next year. Next week. Yes. In addition, we had 3 bills that were deferred. They're also listed here, but I have marked them as deferred. Okay? All right.
Madam Clerk, would you record?
I'll record your votes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Councilmember White, do you want to add anything to that?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we have bills up for second reading. We have bills 1 through 9.
Wait a minute.
We had a bill up for third reading, but it was deferred,
It was
correct?
deferred, but we also have number 7 that is going to be deferred as well. It's not marked as deferred, but we have from our attorney that we do need to defer that. Correct.
Second. 1 through 6, 8, and 9. We have a motion to give second reading to, and a second. Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, I just was wondering, I hadn't heard about the deferral required for that's the boundary line for the James Island Public Service District. Is that the one?
The ordinance requires a public hearing, and the public hearing is scheduled for the next meeting, December the 18th, so we'll do it then.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions, comments? All in favor of those items, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading and ratification, we have a movement, a motion, and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And we're getting close to the end. I do have to sign these here things.
What is marked up on there?
We got one more?
Miscellaneous.
Where's that?
That brings us to miscellaneous business.
Well, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I know all the items under bills up for first reading are deferred. However, item 3, and I talked to Councilman Waring about this, it's showing as deferred on short-term rentals since we've had discussions here and we sort of got a path forward. I'd asked Councilman Waring if he was okay, we would draw that. The neighborhoods that I represent downtown have sort of been sitting on pins and needles for quite some time, not knowing sort of what's going to happen with this, and as it continues to stay on the agenda, it just sort of causes undue consternation. So I asked Councilman Ware if he'd be okay if we would just go ahead and withdraw the item until it comes back up to be heard once we've kind of gone through the motions here, and he agreed. So I'll make that motion that we withdraw.
I'll second that motion. We did have that discussion. I look forward to future discussions on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is,
To withdraw number 3 under first reading.
I just want everybody to know they owe me dinner for that, okay? I'm just kidding.
Don't spend more than $14.
We'll offer you a night stay in an illegal short-term no. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, under miscellaneous business, first up, we got discussion about change to the rules of council regarding standing committees. Councilmember Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I'm bringing this up is because virtually every committee in the city of Charleston, planning and zoning, BAR, big BAR, small BAR, Board of Adjustments, and the list goes on. Obviously, you bring a recommendation forward, and then we debate it, and we vote it up or down. But when it comes to the standing committees that we're on, in effect, at my understanding, we have no say-so. And that just does not compute. I think when you appoint a standing committee, I think council members should have some input in that. So that's why I'm bringing up this rule change to council, that when we have our standing committees being appointed, in other words, the committees that city council people sit on, that we actually have a to and fro, which normally kind of takes place anyway, but it is not codified. So I think it should be codified, and that's why I made this change to the rule of council.
Councilmember Lewis.
if you read your municipal association handbook, it's in there that the powers of council, it lies in council, we have the authority. So, I mean, all powers lie with city council. I mean, it's in the municipal book. So, you know, it should be in the ordinance. So
Councilmember Seekings?
Well, I think actually there's a conflict in our, I don't have it in front of me and I have to go pull it up, but I think there's actually a conflict in our own internal ordinances about the appointment of standing committees, so we should look at it.
I did take the time to read our rules, not so much for this matter, but a few months ago when another issue came up, and it is left up to the mayor to decide committee appointments for the standing committees and to choose a chairman. And interestingly enough, it calls for council to give its consent for the mayor pro tem, and we haven't really been following that practice so much.
Yeah, we do. We always vote for the mayor pro tem.
Well, and in fact, don't we vote on the whole list of committees as well?
We just vote for the mayor pro tem, but you appoint.
You vote for the mayor pro tem and the standing committees. They're all on the same list. He specifies that you're voting for the mayor pro tem and the standing committees list. So, we talked about that.
We did not.
And that, I adopted basically the same practice that Mayor Riley had been following, to be honest with you. And I've honestly tried to be respectful of any requests that I've gotten from council members when I put the committees together, and there hadn't been a terrific amount of change since I came on board.
I agree with all of that, Mr. Mayor, but and I'm not saying it was disrespectful or uneasy.
Right.
That process, are you telling me that the way the ordinance is now, that you have the right to appoint the standing committees, even if city council said we'd like to have a role to play in that? By vote of council, are you telling me that's what the ordinance says?
That's what the rules of council
I understand,
yeah.
but I'm proposing a change to that rule.
Yes.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor, if council were to vote that were to be done by mayor and council, are you telling me that wouldn't stand?
Well, again, what the current rules of procedure state is that the mayor shall appoint the standing committees and name the chairperson, and the mayor from time to time may make such changes. And I mean, that's consistent with the strong form of mayor government. So, I mean,
But my question is, Councilor, if city council votes that those standing committees are to be done by the mayor and council, are you telling me that can't be done? That's unconstitutional?
No, I think it can be done.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it can be done, but again, it's I would say it's inconsistent with the form of government we have, although there's nothing that prohibits it from being done. And I mean, one option may be requesting council members to give their recommendations to the mayor and name, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 options, and then he can put together the committee and then put it to a vote to you if it's satisfactory.
I think council should have say-so by vote of the standing committees, as opposed to, frankly, one person, the mayor, moving it around. We've done it over the years. It's not been codified that way. We sit down with the mayor, discuss committee appointments, and pretty much when that slate comes out in January, we vote for it. But in my opinion, we were voting for mayor pro tem, not necessarily all the standing committees. So, Madam Clerk, are you saying that we were voting for the committees as well?
Yes. That's been the practice.
It's on the list. It starts with the mayor pro tem, which the mayor then formally recommends the mayor pro tem, and you vote on it. It's the list of standing committees and the mayor pro tem.
So we are not just voting on mayor pro tem?
No.
That's not consistent with what she said.
That's consistent to our practice, but not to the way the rules of council are written.
And that's the part I want to clear up. That's the part I want to clear up. In other words, every year that I was on this council, we have been voting on Mayor Pro Tem. The committee appointments were kind of worked out, but as far by vote of council, my understanding was that vote did not include whether you were or were not on a particular committee or not.
Councilmember Griffin, then Lewis.
Susan, time to time, is there any sort of regularity to that, or that could be every 6 months, or, I mean, I know we do it pretty much every year, but is that consistent with other municipalities? Or the reason I say that is because, you know, I can understand your point here, and what I would say on that this whole thing is, you know, I mean, each of us around the table has some really special attributes, and a lot of us have committees that we're better suited for or that we have done good work on. And it's like, you know, after a year, if you were to be taken off, let's just say I was taken off Public Works, it would break my heart because we worked so hard, and my district is Church Creek, which makes sense for me to be on Public Works. But if we change it up and we don't have any input in that, then it just doesn't make sense. It makes sense for you to be on Public Safety because you're an attorney, you know, and you have a background.
Criminal.
He's got a background in criminal activity. So I can understand your point.
So, points, and I mean, those are the kinds of things I try to take into consideration when I make the appointment.
Well, let me say this. First thing, Mayor Tecklenburg always come and ask us what committee we want to serve on. Now, if he asks me if I want to serve on community development, I tell him yes, and he don't appoint me, and I say to council that I want to serve on that committee, then city council could take a vote and put me on that committee because we have the authority to do that. But I think he does it a pretty good way. The first few years, he asks us what committee you want to serve on. But if you say, yeah, you want to be chairman of Ways and Means, and you give it to him, and he said, no, I want to put Gary White chairman of Ways and Means, you could say, well, I asked the mayor for that committee, and I want that committee, but he gave it to Councilmember White. Well, if you want it, and you put a motion on the floor to council that you want that committee, council could vote it up or down for the mayor to change it. I mean, just as simple as that. Because all powers, you see that tonight, lies with city council. In order for a budget to pass, you have to have 7 members of council to pass the budget. And anything that you want to do in this room, if 7 people say do it, they got it within the ordinance of the city and the state of South Carolina. You could do it.
Council Lady, our ordinance, as Councilman Lewis describes it, do you agree with it? With what he just said?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Do you agree with what Councilmember Lewis just said in accordance with our ordinance that's in place?
Excuse me, not the way the ordinance is written right now, or the rule is written. And let me clarify something. You asked about state law before, and I don't think that what you're contemplating is prohibited, but I would remind you that you do adopt the rules as an ordinance every year. Right. And so this would have to be an ordinance, a first reading of an ordinance if we're going to make a change to it, and then second and third reading at a later point.
So use the example that Councilman Lewis just gave. I want to be on community development, but I'm not, so I ask, and the mayor says no. I bring it to council, and council says, yeah, put them on city council. According to the ordinance we have.
Not under the current ordinance, no, but the mayor does have the authority to make changes from time to time.
I understand that. I understand that. I know we've had amicable arrangements on that. But frankly, we're coming up to an election year, and things tend to go bonkers in election year. And that's what I'm trying to stay away from, Mr. Mayor. For example, we've been meeting for 6 months, and the first time I heard today that we could add 2 fire stations, have employee pay raise start in January without a tax increase, that's the first time I heard that today.
I didn't say it. I said I wanted to do it. I think you ought to listen to what I have to say.
No, we got a newspaper article that says that. So I didn't address that on the floor of council because I get along with my colleague right here. But you know what? I said I just chalked that up to election year politics. I went down to relieve myself. I came back up on the elevator. I saw a wonderful interview going on. I said, boy, you know, it's great to be able to get fire stations, get pay raises, and we don't have to increase revenue. So I said to myself, so I spared y'all that during the debate of the budget, but I chalked it up to election year politics coming up. So because of election year politics, and Councilman Griffin is right. We all have certain challenges, and you've done a good job putting us in place. But just in case election year wild route would come up, I think we need to codify what you do in the form of an ordinance, where we work through this jointly, and then we vote on not only the mayor pro tem, but the standing committees of council as well. Primarily what Ms. Hardina just said, because if we were to take a vote under the current ordinance that we have in place, we can't do that.
I'm going to read that municipal book again. I think we can.
This is what it is. Now, we have the right to change the ordinance, and that's what I'm recommending right now. We have the right to change the ordinance. But for a change in the ordinance, we have to follow what is currently written.
We can change the rules of council.
Right.
So there's a procedure for that. So the ordinance you're talking about is section 2-49, which just get a copy to everybody. And what it says is the mayor shall appoint standing committees and shall name the chairperson of each, and in the case of a vacancy in any committee or in the chairperson of any committee from time to time for cause. So it's all left to the power of the mayor. We, every January, as I think the clerk said, we, among other things, we have to re-adopt our own rules. So you'd have to change this as part of adopting our rules, including of decorum, of procedure, all those things. They get re-adopted every single year.
That's why I put it on the agenda, so we can have that discussion.
But that's the ordinance that you'd have to change. 2-49.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilmember Moody.
Yeah, I was just looking back at the January minutes from 2018, and basically you obviously have the right to establish new committees because you set up a budget committee. The only thing we did was we set up a budget committee and you named the people to it, and then we voted on the mayor pro tem, and that's all we did. I don't see anything about voting on the rules, but you said it's every 2 years or every 4 years?
Every year.
We haven't adopted rules.
I don't remember us.
Yes, we do.
Rules of council?
It's just that we rarely change them.
Correct. Swear in. Correct.
What?
We traditionally do it when we swear people in, which would be every 2 years.
2 years. I know we didn't do it in 18, I don't believe. I'll look back and see. I don't remember doing it.
We do it when we swear people in.
All right.
I didn't change any rules.
I thought that was exactly.
All right. Any more discussion on the question?
Can I just have the minutes reflect that I do not believe, nor do I know of any criminal activity from Councilmember Shayhead. just so we have it on the record.
All right. Are we ready to move to number 2?
Yeah. Well, we had a good discussion, but what's the action step?
Well, if somebody wants to bring forward a change to the rules of council.
But it takes 3 readings. We can't do all that in January. Well, we can in the month of January. We can do it in the month of That's right.
Yeah.
Second.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. I'll get with council.
Great. Terrific.
The second item, there's some information that I understand is going to be coming forward in front of the Public Works Committee. Some work that I think our financial advisor have done on some of the drainage project overall. And if council would please, I'd like to defer that until some of that information has a chance to come in front of Public Works.
Okay. Terrific. Councilmember Moody.
I'd like to just make a quick comment on that last item. The Donner Lake out in Councilmember Shealy's district, we probably need to get Eric Adams with the county to come speak to Public Works, because what I was thinking we were going to do is not what's going to happen with the county. The county is going to widen that road. They're not going to put any kind of drainage under Glenn McConnell to help that drainage over there, primarily because you got to go through the Corps of Engineers and a whole bunch of other stuff. But that's going to be a problem for your district, Councilmember Shealy. But what the county said they were going to do was they were going to widen the road and do all the infrastructure, but they were going to kind of stay away from that area where the city, if they wanted to go through the process of doing that we could do that. So Eric has some information. I just got a little bit of it the other night, so yeah. I just want to be sure the committee was aware of it.
And Councilmember Shealy contacted me this morning about it. I wasn't able to make the meeting last night, and as it so happened, we were both at the groundbreaking for the West Ashley Library, and Chairman Rawl and the other Councilmember Moody was there, and we kind of huddled up about this issue. I don't know if right now is the right time to give us a report, but we believe we have a path forward. The city's going to have to take responsibility to get permitting for the water side of this project. And there's enough time, we believe there's plenty of time. I talked to Mr. Horner today, that there's plenty of time for us to be on a parallel track, for the county to get their permits for the widening, and us to get our permits for the boring underneath, and still be able to accomplish the dual projects at the same time. And they verbally committed to me today that as is allowed with the half-cent sales tax, that even though we get our own permit and have our own project, that they would be able to assist us with funding our project as well. So that's the gist of the conversation we had. Yeah, right. But we had that conversation with them just this morning. Yeah.
But I agree. I'm sorry. I agree. We need to get a group of people in the same room talking between the county and the city to make sure everybody's on the same page. So that's
absolutely. Okay. So we'll come back to those other items. We have a joint meeting with the Planning Commission, I think maybe the first in history. That's later this week, Thursday at 3 o'clock, and a City Council workshop next December 11th. And I may ask that we modify the agenda for that workshop and add this matter that came up this evening about the Fishburne Spring Street Phase 4 drainage project. The reason why it's time sensitive because we got those bids in, and there's only so many days that the bids are good, and believe it or not, the price could go up, and that's what I've been advised. So I want to go ahead promptly, very promptly, and have the meeting with council and talk about that project, so we could decide by December 18th if we're going to move forward or not. Councilmember Jackson, Shade, and Mitchell.
Very quickly, well, first of all, I can't remember. I know originally we were going to have some workshop about the stormwater drains, drainage that's underway. Is that still the nature of the 11th? What was the workshop on the 11th to be? This
was a delayed workshop that we had scheduled earlier in the year about innovation and our process improvement and topics like that. And we have a speaker that's scheduled to come share some insights with us from out of town. Still want to do that, but it's clear to me we need to go ahead and talk about Spring Fishburne also.
And then just for Mr. Lindsay, knowing we've got our joint work session on Thursday. Is there any homework that you would be asking of us to be prepared to do?
No homework as of now. Read the agenda when it's published, and we'll work with the clerk to make sure it goes out on time.
Which will be tomorrow,
That's my understanding. That's correct.
Okay, we're still in session. Councilmember Shade and then Mitchell.
This is a reminder for council that tomorrow at the First Christian Church at 1293 Orange Grove Road is an open house forum to review the plans from the county on the redesign of the intersection of Old Town Road and San Brittenburg. So if you have a chance, stop by. It begins at 5:30, so you can see what the county is going to plan, and I'd like to have you also input on that.
The suicide merge intersection. Councilmember Mitchell.
Right.
I was going to ask a question, but she asked a question for me. But I just want to remind everyone, this is not nothing to dealing with the council at all, but my church is having a concert on Friday, this Friday. My choir, along with some friends of Mount Zion, we are doing the 7 numbers from the Messiah. And we're going to have some spirituals and singing spirituals afterwards. We are doing this with the Charleston Symphony Orchestra. So that would start at 7:30 on Friday night. So if you're available, you can come by. And it's going to be, we did a lot of work in this because singing with the orchestra is a little differently. So it's a lot, it's going to be a lot. Huh? Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
He has a great voice.
Any further business to come before us tonight?
My granddaughter is graduating from Georgia State University on Saturday, and I'll be in Georgia.
All right. With that note, we stand adjourned. Thank you.